Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back. My name is Sal Betcher. If this is your first time here, and today we're going to be breaking down this conference championship, maybe one of the best conference championships I can remember since I've been watching football for however many years. We got the Chiefs and Patriots, a rematch, and we got the Rams and Saints, right? Another rematch. So two teams that have played each other beginning of the year. By far the four best teams. The three best offenses, four of the top 5 or 6 offenses going at it. This is going to be a ton of fun. We're going to break it down. We have a 2-game slate, so the main slates are all done. But the 2-game slate gives us a lot of strategy, a lot of opportunity to kind of differentiate ourselves, right? And you can think a little bit differently. We're going to take a first look at it, and if you want to know more about how to be like optimal contrarian or set yourself up apart to have better lineups that not a lot of people have, I wrote a 9-page PDF below, totally free. You can check that out. It's in the description. It's listed as like a gift or just basically it's free, right? It just says guide to being more contrarian or setting yourself up to be more optimal. Please download that. It's totally free. Let me know what you think about it. Trying to hone those written skills for DFS as well as the video. So let me know what you think about that for sure. And then I'll also give just a quick little rundown for Draft Dashboard, somebody who sponsors some of these videos. They have some good tools on there, Position Optimizer, reduce some of your research costs, let you know people's routes, the amounts of snaps they're playing, all these different types of things. Also gives you projections. You can build lineups through their optimizer. It's really good if you're a beginner and you haven't used one of these before. It's a little more easier and straightforward. There's videos on there than some of the other ones. You don't have to set as many rules. So if you're a beginner, definitely check it out. 30 days for $1 if you use the code below, a little promo for you guys. But let's get into this video, right? So we're going to do a little first look here, and then later in the week, if you're new to this, we're going to do a whole breakdown of this slate, right? And maybe some final thoughts videos as the week goes on. I appreciate it, guys. I want to get to 1,500 by the end of this week subscribers. We're just plowing through the subscriber count. So if you could hit that subscribe button, thank you so much. We're going to have another contest. Who will be the highest scoring running back on this slate, on this 2-game slate? Drop that below for a $10 PayPal opportunity. Whoever picks it, we'll put them all into a little raffle, and we'll see who wins. I'm going to release who won the past week for Michael Thomas, being the highest scoring wide receiver, in the description below. So that's it. Just please subscribe, like the video so it moves us up a little bit. Comment below. You have to be a subscriber to enter that contest for $10 PayPal. So, first look video, right? We got 2 games, 4 teams, 4 good offenses, so there's going to be probably a lot of points based on what we saw earlier in the year, or will there be? That's something we have to look at. So quarterbacks is something I touched on in my recap video that's up. You can check that out. Some of the things I felt like I got right and wrong from the divisional round, and just some trends that I'm kind of trying to monitor now. And one of the main trends, and probably the biggest trend, was quarterbacks, their pricing, and does it really matter in the playoffs? Well, the first 2 weeks, some of the cheaper owned players, they did fine. They went over 20 points. Philip Rivers was one of the lowest owned guys, and we could check that in Fantasy Labs contest dashboard. If we just go to ownership here and check out what his ownership was across some of the bigger tournaments. But these lower owned, cheaper guys, they're ending up getting you 20 plus points more times than the expensive guys. Mahomes and Luck last week didn't go for 20. Luck didn't even go for 13. Breeze was the highest owned guy last week, or second highest priced guy last week. He ends up going for like 22, but you have guys like Dak getting you 20. You have guys like Rivers going for a bunch, Brady getting you 20. If you check Rivers, look at this, 3% and less. That's absolutely insane. You had Rivers, you set yourself up just totally well to cash in a lot of situations because, one, he was cheap, he had a lot of points, and you can spend your salary elsewhere. So that's just a way to differentiate yourself. The chalky guys are going to be the expensive guys, right? And in this situation, you're going to see all 4 of these guys are in positions this week where they can do anything they want because they're going to be in high-scoring situations, right? Something that does scare me a little bit is that New Orleans has just been absolutely great at home on defense. It didn't look like that early in the game yesterday, but then you end up only getting a shutout after that, right? After you put up 14 points, they played absolutely fine. So they've been great on defense at home, so that's a little bit scary. But we saw earlier in the year this exact same matchup. It just went for a shootout. Goff goes for, I believe, 33 points if you want to look at Goff's game logs pretty quick. And this is basically what you're going to see out of every Rams player. They all did really well in this game. He goes for 33.34 points, almost 400 yards, 3 touchdowns, had some rushing yards. If he's forced to throw the ball, that's what's going to happen. The Saints do stop the run. They're top 5. I think they're number 3 in DVOA against the run. So I think C.J. Anderson was a fluke. I'm not going to be on him at all this week. Maybe that'll be a mistake, but just as of right now, I don't want to be on him at all. And they stopped the run, something that Dallas didn't do well, something that Dallas was claimed to be doing well, but really they got exploited. So I think this is going to be a Goff week. And the fact that he's 5,400, I kind of want to start and see what we could build with our lineups. Obviously, Mahomes is going to be a great play, right? He's at home. Last week was the same type of situation we thought, and then he ends up not doing as great as we expected. I mean, partially is because Tyreek takes a 36-yard ender out. Damian Williams gets in the end zone. There was just not much pressure on the Chargers, or not the Chargers, the Chiefs to score, right? Breeze at home is a good play as well. I mean, these are all good plays. We're in the Final Four. Brady is somebody who intrigues me. I think Brady ends up being maybe the lowest owned guy. It's going to be, I think, Goff and Mahomes for ownership-wise, because you can either go down or you can go up for the stud. But Goff I'm going to go right back to because he struggled last week. Everybody saw it on national TV. I'm not even sure he really struggled, right? Percentage-wise, completion percentage a little lower than usual, but he didn't have to throw the ball. He made some good throws downfield, some overthrows, but he just didn't have to throw the ball. He didn't really struggle. His run game just went absolutely berserk. You take 270 of those rushing yards, minus 100 of them even, and he has a good game, right? And that's usually what you expect from a guy like Goff. So he didn't really play bad. It was just a matter of the matchup, and this week it's going to be a lot harder on the ground, so I'm going to go Goff where you can get yours against the Saints in the air. Let's see where we could build from there on the first look. 2-game slates, big tip. Again, you could download below that PDF. Lots of just big tips on how to differentiate yourselves. And I like these 2-game slates. We're used to them in the regular season, right? I don't play much of them Sunday night into Monday night games, Monday night, Thursday night. And if there's London games, you can do Thursday into the Sunday. They're just not this big of prize pools, 300K. It's because it is the main slate this week. But there's a lot of ways to be different. I talk about them in there. So definitely check it out. It's free. Come on, download it. All right, so running backs this week. I think it's really tough to go away from James White at 5,400, and these are just quick guys I'm going to put in, and Damian Williams at 6,400. Damian Williams being 6,400, seeing that right now, Spencer Ware, there's no reason for them to go back to him. This guy, Damian Williams, is a stud. They paid him. They took him out of the game the last week of the year, the exact same time they took out Mahomes. Shows you how much they value Damian Williams, maybe. I mean, just look at this guy. He's been an absolute stud since he took over. 100 yards and a tutty game. Got one in the air that game. In very limited, basically a half of playing, he goes for 51 yards on the ground, 8 in the air, and a touchdown. Absolutely goes berserk this past week. I think Pat Thorman or somebody on Twitter bet all the props on the overs. Over 80 yards was plus 200. Over 100 yards was like plus 400, and plus 700 was over 120 for Damian Williams. He bet all three. They all three hit, right? And that's honestly something. 80 yards didn't seem like that much once Spencer Ware was ruled out. So Damian Williams is a guy that 6,400. I really think if you're going to tell me that the higher priced guys are going to be Gurley at 75, are going to be Kamara at 65, I feel like Williams has to be above Kamara, especially the fact that Kamara just is splitting time with other people, right? And Williams might have to do that with Ware, but I don't think anything more than 25% of the snaps, if that. They love Damian Williams, and he deserves it, right? So Damian Williams or White are who I want to throw in here. White might be chasing points, but I was on him last week, and I think he's just different in the playoffs. I think that the Patriots like to get the ball to him. He runs a lot of his routes from the left side. Quick looking this morning, looking at what the Rams do to guys running a lot of their routes, running backs, at least short passes to the left. They're actually a little bit better at it, right? I have the exact number down there in DVOA, but I think they're 9 overall. And short passes to the left, which is the majority of where James White runs his routes. So that's concerning, but it's not like they're stopping those passes from being completed. They're just stopping them from going for longer yardage. James White's a better back than most of the running backs who catch those short passes anyways. And I just liked his position. 15 catches, that's not going to slow down, right? He's not going to go out next week and get 3 targets, or at least you wouldn't expect that to happen game flow-wise. He's probably going to get his 6 to 8 targets, and he'll probably catch 5 balls. That's just his role, and it gets even bigger in the playoffs. So James White's a guy I want to have in there. Gurley, obviously in a great spot, as in he's cheaper at 7,500. Not as good of a spot if you consider matchup, but last time it didn't stop him. He ended up getting 20 points, which is his floor at that point, right? Not so much this time. But if Anderson's out there eating a lot of carries away, and I don't think he'll take that many carries away, but if he is out there, it concerns you a little bit. And getting off of Gurley, who I really don't know what Gurley's ownership is going to be. If we check Gurley's ownership from last week, there's a little bit of injury worry around him. He still ends up being 37% in some tournaments, 30% in that big one. I think Gurley's going to be right around there because now you don't have Zeke to take away some of that higher ownership and things like that. Damian Williams is going to be super highly owned. Another guy to mention is Sony Michele. He had over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns last time against the Chiefs. I just think he's going to be way too owned. I think he's going to be the chalky play. And again, I just don't feel comfortable playing guys who don't catch the ball because they have to get you 100 yards and multiple touchdowns. That's what Michele did last week. But how consistently can you get 100 yards and multiple touchdowns? Well, let's check his game log, right? 100 yards and multiple touchdowns. He's done it one time against the Chiefs. We'll count this one because he went for like $130 against the Jets. He only had 1 touchdown, but he still gets you in that game 25 points. Because look, even when he goes for 100 yards and 1 touchdown, he's getting you 20 points, which is, yes, good, especially in small slates. That's really good. But that's not killing it. You're not breaking the slate with that, as you are when you get 100 yards and 2 touchdowns when you go for 25 plus, right? Now, 5 points makes a huge difference. He has to go for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. if you count the playoffs, he's only gone for 100 yards, which is not only a good amount. Regular season 4 times, counting the playoffs 5 now. But do you think he's going to go 100 yards and 2 touchdowns back-to-back weeks? Possibly, maybe. Do they get out to that same lead that they had on the Chargers? I don't think so against the Chiefs. Although Michele did fine against the Chiefs last time, I just don't want to play him. If he wasn't going to be as chalky, if he didn't have a good game last week, I'd probably be on him a little bit more. But playing a running back who has no passing game role, yes, he's going up against literally last place, 32nd in DVOA against the Chiefs, so that makes it a little bit better. But no passing game role, just blew up last week. Potentially now you're probably chasing points, and he's going up against a Chiefs team where he's probably not going to have a 2-touchdown plus lead at any point in the game. I don't want any of that, especially on the road as an underdog. That's something else to point out as well if you're talking about trends. Kamara, I think Kamara's a good play. Might end up getting him in my lineups later in the week, but as of right now, maybe in the flex, even in this lineup. As of right now, it's James White and Damian Williams for me. I just feel really good about Williams. And if we get word that Spencer Ware is going to be back and he's fully healthy, and maybe you could pivot away from Williams if you don't like the fact that he'll still see 70+% of the touches, maybe. But if Ware's out, he's the absolute lock button. If he ends up doing bad, then so be it. I think in big tournaments, 50+% of the field should be on him, especially on a smaller slate, probably 70+%. Which, again, smaller slate strategies down below if you download the PDF. But smaller game strategy, I also do like fading guys who are 70+% owned. So if it gets to that point where Spencer Ware seems like he's just going to be ruled out earlier in the week, or even regardless, Damian Williams is just going to be that highly owned if we see some projections. Not going to fully fade him. Definitely not even going to fade him a bunch, but might have some spots where I don't own him just to try and set yourself up for if that slim chance, or that unlikely at least chance, because the public thinks that things are going to happen way more than they actually do, right? When you enter your lineups, you think that they're good, they're great. Things happen, you can't control it. It's so variant, football, especially, or just fantasy in general, but especially football. Things that seem solid or whatever it might be aren't, right? So the fact that Damian Williams has been playing well and he's in a good situation, he might be the 3-down back, that seems solid. He's in a high-scoring environment. Yes, I agree with you. I'll probably have a lot of him. But set yourself up for some lineups where if it doesn't go well, you are in a spot to capitalize big time off of that, right? The small chances that it doesn't go well, which are more than the public actually thinks, because public and everybody, when you make your lineups, you think you're always right. The media portrays it in some of these podcasts and articles to emphasize it and make it even more solid, to seem like it's a fact, when the unlikely happens a lot more than you think. So just something to think about, and that's the type of stuff that's in that PDF if you want to know more. Anderson I'm not on, Mark Ingram I'm not on, and Mark Ingram can very well be the guy who's on a GPP winning lineup. I said James White was going to be on a GPP winning lineup last week. He ended up being it. I ended up playing way more than I thought I would. But Ingram is just, Kamara's taken over the role out there, especially on the ground as well. Ingram now is a guy who needs to get you a 40-yard touchdown to have a good game. He needs to break off a long one. Kamara's getting goal line work a lot more than Ingram now, so I'm not on Ingram. 4,600 though, definitely super cheap, definitely going to be low owned. Outside of that, if we want to look down here, it's really thin, right? If we're not going to be playing Michele, you're going to have to maybe choose between one of these two guys. That's probably the best bet. You could go to Burkhead, who got in the end zone, but he's going to get very limited touches on these small slates. That's all that matters, though, is who can get that 130-yard touchdown or who can get an extra 4 catches. Burkhead could do that. I just don't see it happening with the role James White has. Let's move over to defense quick, just plug one in. So defenses, yes, on smaller slates, they matter a little bit more, but it's just so hard. They're so variant. There's no real rules other than pressure. If you pressure the quarterback, leads to more sacks, leads to more mistakes by the quarterback, potential pick sixes. At 2,300, I'll take the Rams on the road in a game where there's probably going to be a lot of points, or actually 57 over-under. I think I like the under in that early in the week, and I'll get into that in the breakdown video, just some things about pace and all those game control, time of possession. The Saints are pretty high in, and so are the Rams. So both teams like to hold the ball. They like to run the ball. The Saints stop the run. So it could be a whole bunch of stuff I'll get into. But the Rams get pressure, right? With Ndamukong Suh, Aaron Donald up front. They end up getting pressure out there. With Talib back, they kind of shore up that secondary a little bit, so it makes the quarterback hold the ball a little bit more. And if they're at 2,300, again, this is first look. I'm just plugging in defense. I shouldn't even have to really explain why, but that's just the first thing I'll look at. So we have Jared Goff, James White, and Damian Williams with the Rams as our defense as of right now. Let's plug in some wide receivers, tight end, and see what we can do at flex. At tight end, it's pretty straightforward, right, guys? I mean, you have Travis Kelce at $7,100, and then the huge drop-off of $3,000 to Rob Gronkowski. Now, the Chiefs are pretty bad against the tight end, right? We know that. They're pretty bad against most positions. Running back last, tight end, bottom 10. Passing game, bottom 10, bottom half of the league. So Rob Gronkowski, who I had a little bit before pivoting off of a lot of lineups last week, not doing anything, right? This is just absolutely terrible. Since he went off against Miami, who he historically does well against, maybe it's the warm weather, loosen his just big rumbling body up a little bit, but He's had a total now of 11 targets in 4 weeks. That's not good. He's not even running routes out there. He had 1 catch for 25 yards last week. He's just absolute dust. But this is the exact situation that you can capitalize if you want to. I'm going to plug in Kelce because that's just a smart thing to do. I mean, if you want to look a little bit further, everybody was on Gerald Everett last week. I was getting people in the Facebook group, which, join the Facebook group. I'll probably put a little pop-up at the beginning because I didn't mention that. A lot of cool stuff going on in the Facebook group. I'm actually going to insert a little ad here quick about the Facebook group just so I can cut it, put it in the beginning. What's going on, guys? Make sure you join the Facebook group. That's also a really good spot to get up-to-the-minute information. There's over 100 people in there now. We're talking strategy basically nonstop. It's a great place to be. Not just football. If you like NBA, people are talking about that in there. We're going to pivot into that, especially after the Super Bowl. But get in there because it's nonstop during the week. We're helping people out. People are winning. I think this past week somebody won $1,000, so that's a lot of fun. Somebody else won $700, so have people getting sweats in there. So check it out. Building a little community in there, definitely. End of ad. There we go. All right, so Everett last week, some people in that Facebook group, some other people are telling me, oh, because I was saying you got to just stick with the top 4 guys, the 4 highest owned guys, probably even the top 3 if you don't want to go Gronk. And then people are saying, oh, well, Everett's the one guy I would play. He's only 2,700. What has he done? He did this. He did a goose egg the week before. You're looking at these couple of weeks of 7 targets compared to his whole year of just dust, compared to his whole year of averaging, 2, maybe 3 targets a game. I don't want that. I know what the GPP is if you're playing them. I don't want that. Below that, there's absolutely nothing. It's a wasteland. I mean, you can rely on Higbee's 1 to 2 targets or 1 to 2 catches for 4 points. These are where you're going. You're going Gronk or you're going Kelce. I think you go Kelce, although the Patriots held him, I think, to 5 catches on 60 yards. The Patriots are a little bit better, a little surer against the tight end in the middle of the field, which is where Kelce runs a lot of his routes, intermediate. That's where the Patriots are actually pretty good, top 10, top 7, I think, against the tight end and against passes to the middle of the field. But it's a different animal with Patrick Mahomes, a different animal with Travis Kelce, especially in the playoffs, the intensity to go to the Super Bowl. Everybody's going all out, and I want the guy who's the stud. That makes you think that Gronk could be a decent play at 4,100, but depending on how much salary we have, I think we might be fine with Kelce here. But we could come back to that. So now you want to pair Jared Goff with some guys, right? Or at least you would expect to. So the first guy I'm looking at is right back to Robert Woods. This man is still below 6K. This man's price drops another $200, something that we mentioned last week. Robert Woods hasn't been below 6K coming into last week since week 6 of the season, since week 4 of the season. He's been so consistent. Yes, he had that one dud week a couple weeks back, which I loved because I thought it would drop his ownership, but it didn't because people are too sharp and they saw how cheap he was. But he had 6 catches, 8 targets, 69 yards. Not a terrible game, 14 points in a game where your team ran the ball a bunch and your quarterback only threw it 28 times and he looked at you for 8 of those, so he's looking at you for like 30% of them, right? That's pretty good. Matchup in the slot. PJ Williams has improved this year, but still matchup in the slot I'll take. Saints are a little bit better in the middle of the field, but again, I'm taking this all day long with Robert Woods. I'm going to go right back to the well with him. And if we end up not playing Gurley in a first look, I'm fine going with Cooks as well. I'd actually prefer the Saints to get out to a lead in this one and give me Cooks as well. Cooks, again, 65 yards, a little more of a big play upside. Didn't have a terrible game for taking into account that it was all on the ground for the Rams. But that was just a quick look. Let's see what else we could do here. Tyreek Hill's somebody who I've just felt so bad not playing in so many times this year, and he's in another prime position to go off. Maybe not what he did last time, over 100 yards, 3 touchdowns, just absolutely torched the Patriots, who on the year are very good against the deep ball, like a top 5 team against the deep ball. I think number 6, actually. I have to look, I have it written down somewhere, but DVOA against the deep ball, they're very good, but Tyreek Hill's just a totally different animal, totally different freak out there, type freak. So somebody that I probably want to end up getting in my lineups, Michael Thomas, just an absolute stud. We saw what he did last week, 38 points, almost went for a 40-burger, just was killing it. He just seemed to be all over the field. He probably could add even more points if this game was not as in-controlled by the Saints, right? If they were forced to throw the ball a little bit more, which I guess they did throw a decent amount. How many times did Brees throw in this one? 38 times, yeah, so they did throw a decent amount, but getting 16 targets, 12 catches, he's just an absolute monster. The way we're building, we can fit higher-priced wide receivers, especially if we go down to Gronk, just not something I'm sure I want to do. Wide receiver after that, I mean, there's not much in this. This is a wasteland. Don't want to touch anything below 4K probably. Sammy Watkins at 4K is a value. We saw Sammy Watkins come back. He got 8 targets, 6 catches. 62 yards. I feel like a lot of people are going to generate or go towards Sammy Watkins because of this low price point. If we put him in there, you get 84K to spend elsewhere. You can throw Thomas right into the flex and have a pretty solid lineup. Let's evaluate wide receiver a little bit more, though. So Sammy Watkins at 4K, that's a good value play, right? That's a great value play. I think he's going to be highly owned because of that value that he provides. Philip Dorsett got in the end zone. These are some guys that can actually shift this slate. A guy like Dorsett, probably more so a guy like Hogan, who runs more routes out there, did nothing, been absolute dust. But in the conference championship game against the Chiefs, who we mentioned, those guys after the number one receiver do a little bit better. Edelman, that might be a little trouble for him, but I'm not too worried. There's a lot of great wide receiver options, not so much running back options on this slate in terms of stud guys, right? I mean, you have a couple of studs here in Tyreek, who's been a stud. You have a guy like Julian Edelman, who's been a stud. And you have a guy like Michael Thomas, all studs. And then the consistency of a guy like Woods and Brandon Cooks, the upside of him. So this is a lineup that we have right here who I'm not feeling awful about this lineup at all. I get 4 pass catchers. Differentiate yourself by not going with Gurley, going with a wide receiver in that flex position. We would probably end up making this, putting Watkins in the flex, and he's a low flex option, right? He's very cheap, so it doesn't help us, but at least so you can pivot if you needed to going into that later game if you have time to. Looking at some other things, I think Josh Reynolds is a good play as well. I just would rather have a guy like Cooks. But again, here, let's see what happens if you go with Reynolds. Can you afford anything else coming off of Cooks saving $1,100? Reynolds can get you up from, where were we now at Sammy? Now you get $5,300. What do you get? You can get Cooks. I'm not going to play 3 wide receivers from that team. There's not much, right? I mean, if you really wanted to go Mark Ingram and differentiate yourself that way. But I think Watkins is a smash play at 4K. What else can we get here? Ted Ginn, I don't want to touch it. A couple things I was looking at early is that there's going to be a lot of success for a guy like Michael Thomas against the Rams. They're not as good against number 1 receivers, but they're shored up top 10 against number 2 receivers. I'd imagine Ted Ginn right now is the number 2 receiver out there. So it makes me like him a little bit less, but he still is getting work targets out there, big play upside. Probably will have the easier matchup. But Michael Thomas moves all over the field, so I'm not too worried about him being shut down. He might have Joyner on him. Joyner followed the slot guy a good amount this past week. So, yeah, not playing Tyreek scares me. You can always play him, though. You can always come off of a guy like Thomas and just go right down to Tyreek. Julian Edelman's a guy who's going to continue to get peppered with targets, and in this game, the last time I don't think he did that great, but he was just coming back off the suspension, 4 catches, 7 targets. They shut him down a little bit, but gets in the end zone. A lot you could do with wide receiver here. You can go to Tyreek. What happens if you come down and you go to Julian Edelman? How much can we get up to? You can almost get up there. So if we put Sammy Watkins. So right now our lineup is looking for the audio listeners. Jared Goff at QB, James White and Damian Williams at running back. So paying down at running back relatively to the slate. Robert Woods, Sammy Watkins, Julian Edelman at wide receivers with Travis Kelce in tight end. And now we're trying to fix the flex a little bit. We previously had Cooks with... Instead of Edelman, we had Cooks. Get 2 wide receivers from that Goff, kind of double up on what we did last week, at least from my perspective. And then we had Michael Thomas in this flex, which is a good lineup, actually. Yeah, you can go Kamara if you wanted. You can get Edelman in there, and you can go Kamara, whatever you want to call him. I think I'm going to stick with that original lineup. I'm going to go back to Cooks because I like this passing game option. I think they're going to be limited on the ground, which is why in this first look I'm not playing Todd Gurley. And then we can go back to Michael Thomas here. And then we can finish it up by putting Watkins in the flex. So what do we get here? We're getting a piece of every game, right? We're definitely getting, or every team, definitely getting a piece of the Rams with Jared Goff, Cooks, and Woods. We're getting those pass catchers. We're getting a piece of the Patriots by getting James White, the guy who's probably, if I'd imagine, seeing the most targets in this game out of the backfield. You love to take that. We're getting a piece of this Chiefs offense, which is just great. We're getting their number 2 wide receiver. We're getting their tight end. Maybe we have a little bit too much Chiefs offense, but I'm not sure if that's possible. And we get Damian Williams. We get a piece of the Saints offense, probably their best piece, and Michael Thomas, most consistent piece. So we have a little bit of everything. Maybe I'd like a little bit more of the Saints, but you get to run it back with Goff, Woods, and Cooks, and run it back with a guy like Michael Thomas. I like it. Potentially coming off of Kelce, let's just see hypothetically what that would look like. It leaves you $3,000. You can come up off of a guy like Watkins if you wanted to. You could actually then fit, which is pretty interesting. You could fit Tyreek and Michael Thomas, and then in the flex you can go down and you can go right back to Watkins. If you really wanted to, you can go to Mark Ingram. So there's a way to fit Tyreek and Michael Thomas and Woods, which is 3 great receivers, both upside, both consistency, both have a good floor. Maybe not Tyreek so much, but the other 2 definitely do. You just have to go to Gronk there and just ask yourself, tight end position, Kelce's going to get 20 more times out of not, but what happens if Kelce gets only 15, or if he gets limited like he did last time, gets only 11? Can Gronk get you enough to make up for that and save the $3,000? I think so, right? Especially against the Chiefs. It just depends on how they game plan. Right now, though, we're going to finish it up with Kelce. We're going to finish up this first look lineup by putting Cooks back in here. So the final first look lineup for this NFC Championship, we're going to come out later in the week with our breakdown, and then probably a final thoughts video come Friday or Saturday. and podcast. Jared Goff at QB, saving some money. James White, Damian Williams at running back. That saves us a lot of money. Total, it's only $11,800, which isn't that much actually. Wide receiver, we had Robert Woods and Brandon Cooks, so both receivers from the Rams. This is banking on Todd Gurley being a little bit more shut down. Definitely Anderson being shut down by this top 4 Saints, top 3, I think, Saints DVOA against the run. We get Michael Thomas taking advantage of the fact that the Rams aren't as great against wide receiver ones, right? And we'll kind of ride those points, but he's a stud wide receiver. We'll throw him in there, get a little bring me back from that stack of the Rams. We get Travis Kelce because there's no other tight end. You can go down to Gronk and save 3,000, and I think I will have lineups with that because it lets you do a lot more in different places. But Travis Kelce is just an absolute stud. He's been all year. Don't try and fade him unless you see you have optimal builds elsewhere. And then just bringing it back with Sammy Watkins at 4K might be the biggest value on the slate. I'd argue Damian Williams is, but at Sammy Watkins at 4K, came right back, saw himself 8 targets, caught a couple of balls, and he's in a good position because the Patriots, they're pretty good against wide receiver ones. They're a little less good against wide receiver twos, not that great against everything else. So if you want to say that Travis Kelce is a wide receiver 2 outside of Tyreek, that helps Watkins even more. And then we're going to just finish up with the Rams defense. You can kind of go anywhere at defense after that if you want. If I have to say anything about the Rams defense, it's just the fact that they get pressure. They're cheap. They allow you to do what you want to do in this lineup build. But I would fit any lineup, any defense in. Fill out your lineup first. I know in the first look we just didn't. Fill out your lineup first and then just plug in whatever defense, because at this point it just takes a fluky pick 6 or a blocked kick for that defense to do anything. So don't try and spend too much money if you don't have to at defense. This is a lineup that will do. There's $300K on the line this week in tournaments. This is more so of me building potentially a cash game lineup this could work for, but these cash game lineups are also going to be tournament game lineups since there's just really not a lot of places you can go, right? Especially at running back and wide receiver, it drops off after about running back. There's only maybe 5 viable plays, and then it drops off. So, yeah, this is the first look lineup. If you're still watching to this point, thank you so much. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Trying to go for 1,500 by the end of the week. I appreciate you guys. We're going to be back later in the week with a full breakdown of this 2-game slate. So best of luck if you're playing NBA, whatever it might be. Peace.